I've worked with patients trying to hold on to their hair or grow it back, and this exact question, does this supplement actually work, comes up in my practice almost every week. The hair loss supplement market alone pulls in close to $2 billion a year in revenue and is still growing. And all of these supplements make the same promise: clinically tested, doctor recommended, backed by science. But what most of you spending that money actually don't know is whether the supplement you're taking was ever shown to work for your specific type of hair loss in the first place. So I decided to take a look into the studies myself, and one thing kept coming up over and over again. Several of the biggest hair loss supplements on the market have been studied in people who didn't even have androgenetic alopecia, which is the genetic form of hair loss that they're usually marketing towards. And that doesn't automatically mean those products don't work, but it does change the question: what were they actually shown to work for? Can they be backed by actual science claims, or is it just clinically tested, just a phrase floating around the natural hair growth space to make a product sound more legitimate than what it really is? That's what I want to answer in this video. We'll go through the clinical research behind the biggest hair loss supplements, see what the studies actually found, where the evidence holds up, and where it starts to fall apart, and what that means if you're dealing with pattern hair loss. And before we finish, I want to show you one non-drug-free treatment that's been through proper placebo-controlled trials for androgenetic alopecia, yet somehow gets far less attention than the supplements we just talked about. Hi, I'm Trichologist Bobby Spence. I'm a certified trichologist with over 20 years experience, and I've helped thousands of patients improve their hair growth and their density. Now, before we get into the supplements themselves, I just want to show you where the confusion actually begins, because it starts with why this market got so big in the first place. A lot of patients tell me the same thing before they even sit down. They're not ready for medication, or they've read about the side effects, and the bottle label natural feels like the safer alternative. Now, supplement companies know that hesitation exists, and they market straight into it. The hair supplement industry is closing in on $1 billion a year, and if that number weren't actually tracked with the science, this would be a much shorter video, because a market scaling to these heights doesn't mean the products inside it are proven. It simply means the marketing is working. This leads me to the next question: who's actually buying these, and what are they hoping to fix? The patients walking into my practice with a drawer full of supplements are almost always dealing with androgenetic alopecia or pattern hair loss. It's genetic. It's driven largely by a hormone called DHT, and because of its progression, it keeps getting worse if nothing interrupts the process. You're probably seeing it in people around you working without naming it: thinning at the temples, receding hairline, a crown that is a little more visible than it used to be, and it's common enough that supplement companies build entire ad campaigns around recognizing it. So when a label says clinically tested or dermatologist approved, let's actually talk about what that means. Because on paper, it can sound like these products went head to head with something like finasteride or minoxidil. The real answer isn't that simple, and the closer you look, the stranger it gets. Now, I want to be fair here, because a lot of these companies really did run studies. Now, that part isn't fabricated. However, what matters is who actually are in the study. I was reading one of the studies behind a well-known supplement brand, and at first it looked exactly like the kind of trial you really want to see: randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled, and dermatologist supervised. Then I got to the enrollment criteria, and people with androgenetic alopecia had been excluded, which means the main condition the product is marketed for wasn't actually the condition being studied. Instead, participants usually had temporary thinning brought on by stress, a malnutrient gap, or hormonal shift like the postpartum period. In those cases, a multivitamin can genuinely help because there's an actual deficiency being corrected. The company then takes these results and points them in a completely different group of people with genetic pattern loss, where this cause has nothing to do with nutrients at all. So the proof on the label is really evidence of something else. It worked for people who don't have your problem. This is where I see you have have to be even more careful, skeptical, and where people get fooled because a study can look airtight from a distance using official language, clean charts, and the right vocabulary and still fall apart the moment you check how it's been actually run. A handful of patterns show up again and again when I dig into these. The hair loss condition being studied is never clearly defined. The results get published as a company's like white paper instead of going through peer review. Hair count gets measured in a way that quietly inflates the outcome, and the results get reported only as percentages without any of the raw numbers behind them. That last one is the most sneaky one, because if someone had one hair at the start of the study and 2 hairs by the end, that's technically 100% increase. On a side that looks incredible, but in reality, 1 hair grew. So whenever a study leans on percentages without showing the raw number next to them, that's the moment I stop trusting that claim. If a supplement is genuinely doing something, it should hold up against an FDA-approved treatment like finasteride or minoxidil head-to-head. But trials built that way are rare, and only a few of them exist, like the one study that put saw palmetto directly against finasteride over 2 years, and roughly 9 in 10 people in both groups had their hair loss stabilized, which means it stopped getting worse. But once researchers measured actual new hair regrowth, finasteride pulled well ahead of it, which tells you the saw palmetto's real strength is slowing the loss down, not reversing it. That doesn't make it worthless because you want fully natural starting point. Something around 320 milligrams a day is reasonable, but if you're experiencing finasteride level regrowth from it, the data doesn't back it up, and paying extra is elaborate combination formula rarely add anything on top of the plain version. That's what a well-designed supplement study should look like. Now, let's see how some of the biggest products on the market actually measure up, starting with the ones you're most likely to have at home. These are the ones patients bring up with me consistently, starting with biotin gummies. Biotin only helps you actually if you're deficient in it, and true deficiency is uncommon. And since pattern hair loss isn't caused by low biotin, instead is caused by follicles shrinking in response to DHT, no amount of biotin touches that mechanism. It may help nail growth, but for genetic hair loss, it's not solving the actual problem. It's only worth knowing high dose biotin can throw off certain lab results as well, which most supplement labels don't mention. Moving on to apple cider vinegar shampoo marketed as DHT blocker. You see, cleaning the scalp and cleaning buildup is reasonable, and the shine of your hair can genuinely improve with this, but blocking a hormone is a different claim entirely, and there's no solid evidence apple cider vinegar does that. A rinse-off product like this claiming to interfere with DHT needs real data behind it, and I haven't seen it. Next, we have onion, biotin, and rosemary shampoos. These are like viral ingredients, but viral isn't the same as clinically proven, and shampoo sits on your scalp for maybe a minute before it's rinsed off. So that clearly is a short window to justify a claim like stopping hair loss. Moving on to rosemary oil, this one actually has more human data behind it than most trending ingredients I get asked about, largely from a single study comparing it to 2% minoxidil, but a few details got left out of the clips that go viral. That study uses 2% minoxidil, not the 5% strength that most people use today, and even the 2% results were fairly modest. And we also don't know if the rosemary concentration in any given bottle matches what was used in a study, or whether these participants were combining it with other treatments at the same time. Oil can genuinely make hair look and feel healthier on the surface, but pattern loss starts inside the follicle, underneath the scalp, where an oil never reaches. Next, we have Nutrafol. It has real clinical research behind it, which already puts it ahead of most of what we've covered. But looking closely at one of the men's studies, where the original plan was to measure actual hair count as a primary result. However, technical problems at a study site made a large share of those photo measurements unusable, so the published results lean on secondary outcomes instead of questionnaires. Investigator ratings, shedding scores, those are undoubtedly useful, but it's softer than the objective hair count. The formula also carries a high dose of biotin, and a notable high amount of selenium. And too much selenium has actually been linked to hair shedding, which is actually an odd thing to find inside a hair loss product. Next, let's talk about Viviscal. It has more published studies than most competitors, which sounds promising on the surface, but several of these studies specifically excluded people with androgenetic alopecia or telogen effluvium, the exact people buying the product. And the sample size turned out to be small and tightly selected, which limits how far the results can be applied. And now let's cover serums and scalp treatments like copper peptides, Redenzel, Capixul, caffeine blend. A few of these ingredients have early research or supplier-funded studies behind them, but that's not nothing, but it's not the same as a clinically validated finished product either. And combining several trending ingredients into one bottle doesn't automatically make the bottle effective. Now, if the evidence is this inconsistent in these hair supplements, then naturally one may ask, why do so many people insist they saw results? Well, one reason is the placebo effect. When people expect the product to work, they tend to notice every small improvement and naturally give the product the credit. Sometimes it's the routine that changes. Starting a supplement often comes with gentler combing, regular conditioning, better hydration, and a few healthier habits that can improve the appearance of the hair on its own. In other cases, a multivitamin simply corrects the mild deficiency that someone didn't even know they had. Then there's the hair cycle itself. Shedding phases eventually come to an end, and if that happens around the same time a new supplement is introduced, it's very easy to assume the supplement cause the improvement. None of this means the person is wrong about what they experience. It simply means the real cause of the improvement is harder to pin down than the marketing wants you to believe. That also explains one of the biggest misconceptions I keep getting into my practice constantly. The idea that natural automatically means safe, and history doesn't really back that up. Plenty of vitamins and antioxidants once considered universally beneficial were later shown in large studies to carry real risk at high doses. Natural just means the compound came from a plant or a mineral. It says nothing about whether it's safe to take long term or that at that dose the supplement company decided to put in a capsule. With all that in mind, this is the advice I give to a patient sitting across from me. If your shedding has picked up despite decent hair care, the first move isn't reaching for another supplement, it's getting some basic blood work done. Iron and ferritin, vitamin D, and zinc. I've already covered the 5 blood tests I think that matter the most for hair loss in a separate video. So if you like a more detailed walkthrough, you'll find the link in the description below. Now, if a genuine deficiency shows up, correcting it under medical supervision can make a real difference. And if everything comes back normal, I save your money because cycling through supplements with nearly identical ingredients lists isn't a strategy. It's just an expensive habit. Hair supplements make the most sense if you have androgenetic alopecia, but you can't tolerate FDA-approved medications, and you're looking for a more natural option. Even then, it's important to go with a realistic expectation. At best, they're likely to provide modest benefits, and they're usually something I'd consider alongside a proven treatment under the right guidance, and not as a replacement for one. So if a supplement that you're on is a small part of the picture, where should you be looking instead? One treatment has been studied much more rigorously than most of the supplements we've just talked about. It isn't trying to correct a nutritional deficiency, it doesn't work by changing your hormones, and it doesn't come in a capsule. It's called laser phototherapy, and unlike most supplements, it's been through proper placebo-controlled trials in people with androgenetic alopecia. Now, to understand why those studies matter, it helps to understand what laser phototherapy actually is trying to do. Pattern hair loss happens because DHT binds to the follicle and gradually shrinks it until the hair becomes thinner and thinner, and eventually they stop growing altogether. The 2 FDA-approved treatments tackle that process in different ways. Finasteride and dutasteride reduce DHT, while minoxidil helps extend the growth phase and improve blood flow. But these come with their own side effects. However, laser phototherapy takes a completely different approach. It is a completely non-invasive, drug-free approach for increasing hair growth. In one of the landmark trials in this space, researchers split men with pattern hair loss into two groups, one using an active laser device and the other a sham device that looked identical but delivered no real laser energy. And the active group showed a statistically significant increase in terminal hair density compared to the placebo. Once that effect was confirmed, researchers turned to the why, and the answer wasn't what most people expected. The target isn't the hair itself, it's the mitochondria inside the follicle cells. Specific wavelengths of red laser light get absorbed by an enzyme called cytochrome C oxidase inside the mitochondria, which appears to boost ATP production, essentially cellular energy. And since hair follicles are among the most metabolically demanding structures in our entire body, giving these cells more usable energy helps them do their job more effectively. The laser isn't growing new hair by itself. What it's doing is helping the follicle work better. And the evidence doesn't come from just one study. A 2021 review that looked across multiple clinical trials found that low-level light laser therapy consistently improved hair density, hair count, and overall hair growth compared to placebo. For years, most of the explanation focused on blood flow. Blood flow is probably part of it, but researchers now think there's more going on. Studies have found evidence that laser phototherapy can affect nitric oxide release, growth factors, stem cell activity, and inflammatory signaling. That's why you'll often hear the term photobiomodulation. The light isn't just affecting circulation, it's changing how the cells inside the follicles actually behave. Another thing worth knowing is that every laser device isn't the same. In these studies, researchers carefully control the wavelength, the power, and the treatment time, and the design of the device, because each of those can influence results. So it's a mistake to assume every laser cap or laser comb works in the same way. It also matters whether the device uses a true laser or LEDs. Both are light, but lasers produce coherent, tightly organized light, while LEDs scatter more broadly. And that distinction is exactly where generic LLLT market splits off from true laser phototherapy, a system built around specific, reproducible parameters instead of just shining the light on the scalp. I've spent years working directly with laser phototherapy technology, including my work here at Theradome, and I've watched it produce consistent long-term results in patients dealing with diffuse thinning, crown thinning, and androgenetic alopecia. Light on its own isn't magic, but what actually moves the needle is delivering the right energy at the right wavelength consistently, and that's exactly the kind of detail the supplement industry skips over entirely. So before you buy anything else with clinically tested, printed on a label, check who that study was actually done on. That single habit will save you more money than any supplement on this list ever will. And because getting real results from laser therapy comes down to using the right technology the right way, that's exactly what I got into this video right here when I cover the next 10 things no one tells you about laser helmets, but they should. The myths, the misconceptions, and the details that actually separate a device that works from the one that doesn't. Watch this next.